let me return to Yuri Bezmenov, who was a Soviet KGB agent that wrote a 4-step framework for ideological subversion on a national scale as practiced by the Soviet Union. So the 4 steps are demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. He had a lot of other kind of systematic ways of describing this kind of stuff. So can you speak to some of these ideas about the systematic, large-scale ideological subversion goals of the KGB? Is there truth to that kind of those ideas?
Yes, but I think I already sort of mentioned it. I think Bezmenov was a fraud, and I have again.
Can you elaborate?
Good arguments.
Yes.
Let's put it this way. First of all, we know that the KGB was involved in active measures, which is, you can call it fake news.
Yeah.
Seeding fake news into the countries that are your adversaries. And the Russians have been doing this lately by meddling in our election and focusing on the left and the right fringe and influencing them to become more left and no more right. And Vasily Mitrokhin has in one of his books, he has a whole chapter about active measures. Okay, so what he has to say about the department, and I forgot what department that was the one department that was the least desirable for KGB agents, because these were desk jobs for people who had to come up with fake stories that, in countries where they didn't quite know too much about the country. Now, there were some successes, like one of the 2 most famous successes that I'm aware of is that the canard that the AIDS virus was concocted in a CIA lab. So a lot of people around the world believe that. And the other one was that J. Edgar Hoover was a secret cross-dresser. That is still known by a lot of Americans who are of a certain age that this was the truth. But Mitrokhin actually traces it back to a story that was placed in a sort of left-wing but close to mainstream French magazine, and it was then taken up by more larger newspapers and well-established papers. So they had some successes, but this kind of a massive, well thought out campaign to destabilize the United States, I don't believe the KGB was capable of doing that. Mitrokhin seems to agree with me. I was trained, I would think, I was one of the crown jewels of their agents. One would think that they used the best that they had to help me how to become an American, and they didn't have a clue. So how did they? If you don't know how a country operates, how do you come up with this kind of a very detailed, long-term plan that's also timed? 2 years this and 1 year that and all of that.
Yeah. So we should actually just clarify. So he has this whole idea that there's 15 to 20 years are needed for demoralization.
Yeah.
Where you're basically infiltrating a country or people from a young age, manipulating their mind. You're destabilizing them. That's the second step. That takes 2 to 5 years. You target the country's foreign relations, defense, and economy. You create a crisis artificially, and then you normalize it as if it always was this way. So it's basically saying that the KGB is capable of, at scale, over many years, manipulate an entire population of people.
Right.
And this is kind of, there's a lot of people that believe in conspiracy theories that are amenable to this kind of idea. Now, my own experience is that there is, in fact, just a giant amount of incompetence, and that this is something that's actually very difficult to pull off, because it's incredibly incredibly difficult to achieve this kind of manipulation. I think it would require, first of all, not much bureaucracy, not much slowing down. You have to have incredible, in the modern world, digital systems that are able to do surveillance, manipulation. There has to be a strategy that is carried out in secrecy across a huge number of people effectively. That also requires you hire the best people in the world. And I think it's difficult to execute on this kind of thing if you compartmentalize, because there has to be great collaboration. There has to be a great where there's a unified vision,
coordination,
and coordination across multiple groups. There has to be. I mean, it's very difficult to do now. Nevertheless, especially with technology, this becomes easier and easier. So the bar becomes lower and lower. To achieve mass surveillance becomes easier and easier and easier. Mass manipulation through platforms, because we're now digitally connected, you can now do that kind of manipulation. So it becomes more and more realistic that you could do this kind of thing. But you're saying that no, intelligence, first of all, intelligence is hard. And to do it at scale, and to do it well, and to do it in a way that it's also not just collecting information about the populace, but manipulating the populace is very, very difficult.
Right. Now, let me give you another argument why I think that Bezmenov was a fraud. I mean, I already have I have Matrokin on my side, and my personal observation of the incompetence that I witnessed. I mean, they really, really didn't know what they didn't know. So now Bezmenov was KGB. Where was he stationed? In India. He was a low-level agent in India. And I told you, the one thing that the KGB was really good at it was compartmentalization. How does Bezmenov in India find out about this massive plan that should have been super secret, right? He made it up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And you know why he got away with it? Because Americans eat that up. Because it's not our fault. It's like the damn Russians that doing all that bad stuff. Speaking of the damn Russians doing all that bad stuff, you know about the Internet Research Agency.
Mm-hmm.
They have been doing quite a bit of damage. And I'm now familiar with the world of enhanced artificial persons. These are the avatars on Facebook and Twitter and so forth that look like real people. Mm-hmm. And there are quite a few of them. And I have a good friend who operates in that realm. And he uses, for instance, facial recognition when he thinks that there's a suspicious character, say on LinkedIn or on Facebook. And very often he finds out, that person exists, but it's not the person who it pretends to be.
So basically detecting the enhanced artificial.
Yes,
people.
but he can also make them.
Right.
You think the United States
goes hand in hand? Yeah.
The United States doesn't do it. We do it too, but
well, this is to push back against your pushback, right? Yeah, Bezmenov might be a fraud. But is it possible, especially in the modern age, that there is these kind of large-scale systematic operation? Wouldn't you, as a government,
more so,
that's investing billions of dollars into military equipment, in a world that's more and more clearly going to be defined by cyber war versus hot war?
Right.
Wouldn't you start to have serious meetings, large amounts of hires that are working at how do we manipulate the information flow? Mm-hmm. How do we manipulate the minds of the populace? Mm-hmm. How do we sell them a narrative? So even though he might have been making up a story because people eat it up, could it speak to some deep truth that's actually different than the truth you came up in as a KGB agent?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. It's much easier when all you need is an army of nerds who also
know. Offense. No offense to nerds.
That's a term of endearment I use. I love nerds. I used to be one myself. So, but anyway,
once a nerd, always a nerd. So
so what I was going to say here is
all you need is an army of nerds,
but also experts in the culture of the target country. Okay, and nowadays the world is different. There's a whole lot more fluidity. There's a whole lot of more people that, like, say, Russians, for instance, study in the United States, Chinese, an army of Chinese studying in the United States. They have a lot more knowledge of how we function than the KGB did. And it's vice versa. Not as many Americans in Russia, but we have some. But the Chinese and the Russians have an advantage here.